Conspiracy theorists suspect that much of the COVID panic in the world is created by media outlets for political reasons. But the reality is unfortunately that a lot of people are coming down with this dangerous virus and are being forced to get hospital treatment for life-threatening breathing problems. This forces governments to act forcefully to avoid the spectacle of too many people needing hospital capacity at the same time, with thousands potentially dying from a lack of such capacity. It also seems certain now that a much more contagious variant of the virus is spreading around the world, and the city of Sydney has recently become the epicenter of this so-called Delta variant's entrance into Australia. Here are the details. Reuters reports that much of Sydney went into a one-week lockdown on Saturday, June 26, as authorities struggled to contain an outbreak of the highly contagious Delta variant of COVID-19 in the city. The Australian Medical Association said the move was not enough and called for a complete city lockdown. Only 65 cases had been reported by Saturday, but doctors say they want to make sure the spike does not get out of hand and swamp hospitals. The new panic started on June 15th when a saliva test showed that an airport limo driver had contracted the highly contagious variant. He then passed the variant to others, and in 2 of these cases, the moment of transmission was caught on CCTV. Footage shows a man in his 50s caught the virus by merely passing through the airspace of the infected driver in a Bondi clothing store, and a woman in her 70s also caught the variant by simply sitting outside a coffee shop when the driver was inside the coffee shop. Experts say the Delta variant seems to linger in the air for a period of time and can infect people who merely breathe in the same air. This faster-spreading Delta variant is a top concern in many countries, including China. Fears over the rapid spread of the variant prompted the Shenzhen Bao'an International Airport to cancel hundreds of flights and tighten entry controls on Saturday, June 19th, after a single restaurant employee tested positive. Remember when collaborators were treated like traitors? Well, China is paying foreign collaborators to spread its disinformation in target countries. And these collaborators are often so-called influencers, with many followers on social media platforms like Twitter. That's the finding of a new study published on Monday. The study also found that China pays collaborating news organizations to spread its disinformation. Here are the details. Taiwanese officials accused China on Monday, May 24th, of spreading fake news about the COVID-19 situation in Taiwan. That same day, Taiwan's Doublethink Lab released a report that details how Chinese government-backed disinformation flooded Taiwan in 2020. The disinformation amplified discord prior to Taiwan's elections and spread COVID-related rumors aimed at delegitimizing Taiwan's democratic government. The researchers analyzed thousands of posts to determine their origin, purpose, effect, audience, and mode of spreading. They found that one tactic China uses is to pay news outlets to repackage Chinese propaganda as real news. Another tactic is to work closely with real online influencers in the target country to get them to share the disinformation through their platforms. China also uses websites that aggregate low-quality articles to spread disinformation, often through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other platforms. Another tactic is to mobilize Chinese nationalists to post and amplify disinformation online. The report concludes that the Chinese government has developed a sophisticated set of disinformation tools that it is deploying inside liberal democracies. It says that Beijing's disinformation operations in Taiwan follow a set pattern, which is also being deployed elsewhere. A powerful new COVID-19 vaccine from Novavax uses a different approach from previous vaccines and has been found to work well in more than 90% of tested individuals. These results are paving the way for it to be available later this year in the US and elsewhere. The Novavax vaccine uses purified pieces of the coronavirus to spur an immune response in the body. Here are the details. Reuters reports that Novavax Incorporated said on Monday, June 14th, that its new COVID-19 vaccine was more than 90% effective against a variety of coronavirus variants. The company says its vaccine is most effective against the original coronavirus strain, as well as the Alpha strain that was first detected in the UK. The vaccine is a more conventional type of mixture than those currently available. Novavax does not use mRNA, unlike mRNA vaccines like that of Pfizer and Moderna, which contain a piece of genetic code called RNA that prompts the body to create an immune response against the virus. Novavax differs from this in that it uses the traditional approach of injecting purified pieces of the virus to spur an immune response more directly. It contains an actual version of the virus's spike protein that has been treated so it cannot cause disease, but can still trigger the immune system. The body can then make antibodies against the spike proteins that cover the coronavirus and which enable the virus to penetrate human cell membranes. The Novavax vaccine showed successful results after its Phase 3 clinical trial, which tested more than 30,000 volunteers in the US and Mexico. This puts Novavax on track to have its 2-dose vaccine approved in the US and elsewhere in the third quarter of 2021. Even as a deadly second wave of COVID-19 ravages India, doctors are now reporting a rash of cases involving a rare fungal infection, also called the black fungus, among recovering and recovered COVID-19 patients. The infection has a very high mortality rate, and treatment often involves the removal of an eye. Here are the details. The BBC reports that surgeons in India are reporting a sharp increase in the number of mucormycosis cases in patients who survived COVID-19. Mucormycosis is a rare fungal infection that is caused by exposure to mucor mold, which is commonly found in soil, plants, and even in the mucus of healthy people. It affects the sinuses, the brain, and the lungs, and can be life-threatening in diabetics or people with weakened immune systems. The infection has a frightening mortality rate of 50% and often requires the removal of an eye or sinus tissues. Diabetics who survive coronavirus are especially at risk. Some doctors believe that's because diabetes lowers the body's immune defenses, then coronavirus exacerbates the problem, and then steroids, which help fight coronavirus, acts like fuel to the fire. Steroids reduce inflammation in the lungs for COVID-19 and limit the damage, but they also reduce immunity in both diabetic and non-diabetic COVID-19 patients. It is thought that this drop in immunity could be triggering India's spike in mucormycosis cases. Mumbai's busy Sion Hospital has reported 24 cases of the fungal infection in the past 2 months, up from 6 cases a year. 11 of them had to lose an eye, and 6 of them died. Most of the patients are middle-aged diabetics who were struck down by the fungus 2 weeks after recovering from COVID-19. You won't believe how fast China has built this massive quarantine camp. Here's why they did it. CNN reports that China is rushing to build a massive quarantine camp that can house more than 4,000 people after an outbreak of COVID-19 this month that has left tens of millions of people under strict lockdown. The camp is located on the outskirts of Shijiazhuang and not far from Beijing. Construction began on January 13th, and the first section of the camp is now complete and ready for use, according to state-owned broadcaster CCTV. China has largely contained the spread of the virus, but a sudden rise in cases has alarmed officials and raised concerns ahead of the Lunar New Year, the country's most important annual festival, during which hundreds of millions of people are expected to travel to visit family members. Officials in Shijiazhuang, where the outbreak is centered, have initiated mass testing and strict lockdowns, moving entire villages into centralized quarantine facilities in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. The new quarantine camp will house close contacts of confirmed COVID-19 patients as authorities continue an extensive contact tracing and testing program. NPR reports that a WHO research team traveled to China in January to probe how the COVID pandemic first started. A rash of theories have been spread about the origin of the virus, including that it escaped from a Wuhan lab. However, the WHO investigators say they found that the virus likely passed from bats in southern China to animals in wildlife farms and then to humans. These wildlife farms take exotic animals like civets, porcupines, pangolins, raccoon dogs, and bamboo rats, and breed them in captivity. Some of these farms were likely supplying such wild animals to vendors at the Huanan Seafood Wholesale Market in Wuhan, where early cases of COVID-19 were discovered last year. The wildlife farms are part of a project that the Chinese government has been promoting for 20 years to lift rural populations out of poverty. However, China shut these farms down in February 2020, likely because the government thought that they were part of the transmission pathway from bats to humans.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.